Something was wrong. I first began to notice on a fine summer day after the Bond Festival. At the time, I happened to be lounging around the living room watching a high school baseball game on TV without being particularly interested. I'd accidentally woken up before noon, so I was pretty bored, though not bored enough to feel like attacking the mountain of summer homework awaiting me. The game on TV, between schools from the same district, had nothing to do with me, but the spirit of rooting for the underdog made me cheer for the team on the losing end of the 7-0 score. For some unknown reason, I had just had a feeling that Haruhi was about to make some trouble. I hadn't seen Haruhi in a while. I'd taken my little sister to the countryside, where my mom had grown up, to beat the heat and pay our respects to our ancestors, and we only returned the day before. This was an annual practice that couldn't be skipped, but then it was summer vacation, so it was only natural that there weren't many chances to run into any SOS Brigade members. Besides, we'd already been through the bizarre happenings when we went on that crazy island, aka the SOS summer camp, back when summer vacation had barely started. I was pretty sure that even Haruhi wouldn't suggest a second trip. She should have been satisfied by now. Anyway, I sighed as I tugged my silent cell phone toward me by the strap ever so casually when something happened to make me wonder if there were any hidden cameras in the room. My phone began to ring with what could only be considered perfect timing. For a moment, I thought I'd become prescient, but I immediately shook my head and abandoned the idea. Idiotic. What is it? The name displayed on the phone was none other than Haruhi's. I waited 3 rings before slowly pressing the talk button. I had a feeling that I already knew what she was going to say, which made me want to question my sanity. "You're free today, right?" That was the first thing out of Haruhi's mouth. "We're all coming to meet up in front of the station at 2. You better come." And with that, she hung up. No seasonal greeting, not even a simple hello. And she didn't even check to make sure that I was the one who had answered the phone. Besides, how did she know I was free today? I'm actually quite... well... I don't have any plans. The phone rang again. What? "I forgot to tell you what to bring." She quickly rattled off the necessary items. "You'll need to come on your bicycle and have plenty of money. Over and out." She hung up. I tossed the phone down and tilted my head. Why do I have this funny feeling like I'm still dreaming? A soft cheer came from the television, and I turned to find that the team I'd mentally designated the opposition had reached double digits. The ringing sound of baseballs against aluminum bats made that very clear. Summer was almost over. I could hear a chorus of chirping cicadas from the vantage point in this tightly sealed room with the AC on at full blast. Guess I have no choice. Still, hadn't Haruhi been satisfied by the so-called summer camp at the beginning of our break when she took us to that weird island? What are we supposed to do in this suffocating heat? I don't feel like moving an inch from my nicely air-conditioned room. And with that thought, I headed to my closet to assemble the required items. "You're late, Kyon. You need to show some more effort." Haruhi was swinging a vinyl bag around as she jabbed a finger at me with a grumpy look on her face. I could see that she never changes. "Mikuru, Yuki, and Koizumi were all here before I was. Who do you think you are to keep the brigade chief waiting? You'll get a penalty! A penalty!" I was the last one to arrive at our meeting place. I came 15 minutes early, but the other members had moved even more quickly, as though they'd been expecting Haruhi's call. This is why I'd always ended up having to pay, but I was used to that by now. I was just an ordinary human. I had no chance of jumping the gun on 3 people with such special backgrounds. I ignored Haruhi and raised my hand in greeting towards the Earnest Brigade members. "Sorry to keep you waiting, guys." The other 2 aside, there was one person I needed to apologize to. Mikuru Asahina, adorned with a fancy ribbon hat, flashed me with a soft smile as she bowed her head. "Oh, it's okay. I only just got here myself." Asahina carried a basket in her hands. I had a feeling that there were good things inside, which got me all excited. I wanted to savor that feeling a little longer, but I was interrupted by the voice next to me. "It's been a while. Did you go another trip afterward?" Itsuki Koizumi revealed his glistening white teeth as he gave me a thumbs up. His suspicious-looking smile hadn't changed over half a summer vacation's passing. "You should have gone on a trip yourself. Why you instantly respond to Haruhi's summons? There's no end to the questions I could ask. Just learn how to say no, man." I bypassed Koizumi's phony, cheerful face and turned my eyes to the side. Yuki Nagato stood there blankly, as though she were Koizumi's artificial shadow. She stood in her summer uniform without a drop of sweat to be seen, a very familiar sight. I had to wonder if she even had sweat glands. Nagato looked up at me as though she were staring at a motionless toy mouse and tilted her head slightly. Was that supposed to be a greeting? "Well, everybody's here. Let's get going." Haruhi raised her voice. I felt obligated to ask. "Where to?" "The public pool, obviously." I looked down at the duffel bag in my right hand, which contained a towel and swim trunks. Well, I knew we'd be heading for some pool. "You're supposed to do summer-like activities in the summertime. Only swans and penguins would enjoy swimming in the middle of winter." "They spend the entire year in water. and they don't particularly seem to enjoy themselves. I'm not the kind of person to accept an irrelevant comparison in an argument. Time never comes back once it's gone, so we have to do this now, during our only summer as freshmen in high school. Haruhi was in her usual rhythm with no intention of listening to what anyone else had to say. The other 3 members never bothered wasting their time on offering Haruhi an opinion, which meant that I was the only one whose suggestions were ignored. From a rational point of view, that was pretty unreasonable, but I was the only rational person here, so that was apparently my fate. Not much of a fate. I began pondering the difference between fate and destiny. We're going to the pool by bicycle. Haruhi announced their plan and proceeded to put it into action, despite the fact that nobody had agreed to it. Upon asking, I learned that Koizumi had also been told to come on his bicycle. The 3 girls had walked here. I should mention that there were a total of 2 bicycles. The SOS Brigade had 5 members. How did she intend to solve that problem? Haruhi's answer came in a cheerful voice. We can have 2 ride on one bike and 3 ride on the other. Koizumi, you're carrying Mikuru. Yuki and I will ride behind Kyon. And so I found myself frantically pedaling away. I could deal with the sweltering heat and dripping sweat, but something needed to be done about the incessantly yapping voice behind my head that sounded like a speakerphone with a busted volume control. Come on, Kyon! Koizumi's getting ahead of you! Pedal harder! Pick up the pace! Blow by him! Through my hazy vision, I could see Asahina wave shyly at me from her position sitting sideways on a rack of Koizumi's bicycle. How come Koizumi gets that and I'm stuck with this? I had to wonder if the word unfair had originated from the very situation I was in. My bicycle and legs were struggling to endure this crippling load. Nagato was sitting on the rack while Haruhi was standing on the hub of the back wheel and holding onto my shoulders. A somewhat acrobatic way for 3 people to ride together. When did the SOS Brigade become a circus? Incidentally, Haruhi said the following before we departed. Yuki's so small that she's practically weightless. That was, in fact, the case. I don't know if she set her own weight to 0 or used some kind of anti-gravity trick, but I could feel only Haruhi's weight as I pedaled away. Well, I wasn't particularly surprised by the fact that Nagato was manipulating gravity. Hell, I'd be more interested in finding out what she isn't capable of doing. I wouldn't have any complaints if she could also have done something about Haruhi's weight, but I could still feel that against my back. I could see Koizumi peering back at me over Asahina's head while trying to hide that irritating smile of his, leaving me to lament in a Balzacian manner. Like the writer, I pondered how hilariously unjust our world is. Damn, I absolutely have to enjoy the experience of riding with Asahina. I'm sure that my granny bike felt the same way. The public pool was so shoddy that it might as well have been called a communal pool. After all, there were only a 150-foot pool and a 6-inch deep pond for little kids. The only high schoolers that would come to swim at this pool were the ones who couldn't find anywhere else to go, or, in other words, us. There were only kids and their parents, mothers for the most part, around. I took one look at the crush of kiddies and their swim rings and I immediately lost interest. It appeared that Asahina would be the only one to entertain my optical sense. Yep, the smell of chlorine. It really brings out the atmosphere. Haruhi stood under the sun in a crimson tankini and sniffed at the air with her eyes closed. She exited the changing room with a firm grip on Asahina's hand. Asahina, with her basket in one arm, was dressed in a childish frilly one-piece, while Nagato was in some kind of plain racing swimsuit. Haruhi probably chose their swimsuits. She didn't give a damn about her own attire, but she tended to make a fuss about what other people, especially Asahina, were wearing. Anyway, let's find a place to dump our stuff. Then we can go swim. Let's race. See who can swim from one end to the other the fastest. And after making that juvenile proposition, she jumped into the pool without any stretching. Can't she read the no diving signs all over the place? Hurry it up! The water's all warm and comfortable! I shrugged and exchanged a look with Asahina before walking towards a nearby patch of shade to set down my towel and bag. There were kids littered across the surface of the water like an outbreak of water striders, making it impossible to swim in a straight line. Brigade members were forced into a 50-meter freestyle race under these harsh conditions that yielded a surprising result. Or, not really, I guess. Either way, the first person to reach the other side was, well, Nagato. Apparently she swam the entire length submerged without ever coming up for a single breath. She waited at the goal with water dripping from the strands of her short hair that were stuck to her face as she silently watched us arrive. It goes without saying that Asahina was last. She had to stop every time she took a breath and throw back a beach ball that happened to land nearby before finally reaching the other side, after taking 10 times as long as Nagato had, by which time she was completely out of breath. The idea of using sports to blow off stress is such a sham. Your body and mind are separate. I mean, you don't have to think for your body to move, but you have to think for your mind to work. Haruhi had a look on her face like she just said something profound. That's why we should race again. Yuki, I won't lose this time. Didn't an adult ever teach her that you're supposed to make sense when you talk? What kind of logic is that? You just don't want to lose. It'll be a contest of endurance until you win. That's why I hoped Nagato would understand the situation as I hauled myself out of the pool. The two of you can race by yourselves. I'll be sitting by the pool as a spectator. My money's on Nagato. Anyone want to bet on Haruhi? Haruhi and Nagato made the 50-meter swim 5 times in both directions before the 3 female members of the SOS Brigade joined a group of grade schoolers nearby who happened to be playing with a ball. Koizumi and I, bored out of our minds, could only watch as the girls played in the water, since there was nothing else to do. Well, they seem to be enjoying themselves. Koizumi continued to watch him as he spoke. It's quite a pleasant sight, and it feels peaceful. Wouldn't you agree that Suzumiya is learning to have fun in a normal fashion? He seemed to be talking to me, so I responded. I wouldn't consider calling me with no warning and hanging up the second her business was finished a normal way to invite someone. Well, as they say, there's no time like the present to act on an idea. Has she ever hesitated to act on an idea the second it's out of her mind? Images of the ridiculous baseball game and giant cave cricket flashed through my mind. Koizumi smiled. Nevertheless, this should be considered relatively peaceful. There shouldn't be any earth-shaking events when Suzumiya has such a cheerful smile on her face. Sure hope you're right. I'm not sure how he interpreted my exaggerated sigh as he chuckled with a snort. That was when Koizumi got a weird look on his face. One I wasn't accustomed to. In other words, he didn't have a thin smile. Koizumi's brow creased. What's wrong? I asked. Nothing. Koizumi appeared to be tongue-tied. A rare sight, but he soon recovered his smile. Probably just my imagination. I must have become a little oversensitive after everything that's happened since spring. Oh, they're coming out of the water. I looked in the direction Koizumi was pointing to see Haruhi walking over like an emperor penguin bringing food to its chicks, with a wide smile on her face. Asahina and Nagato trailed after her like servants accompanying a princess who was running away from the castle. It's almost time to eat, and guess what? Mikuru made sandwiches. You could sell them on the street for 5,000 yen or auction them for at least 500,000, but you have to eat them for free, so you should be grateful. Thank you very much, I said to Asahina. Koizumi followed my lead and bowed his head. How very kind of you. Oh, it was nothing. Asahina looked down shyly as she fidgeted with her fingers. I don't really know if I did a very good job. I apologize if they taste bad. That would be impossible. Any food that's been graced by the touch of Asahina's hands is guaranteed to taste delicious. In this case, the who part of 5W1H would take priority. Hence, I was so overwhelmed by the privilege of enjoying Asahina's assorted handmade sandwiches that I wasn't sure how they tasted. Anything would do at this point. The hot Japanese tea she poured us didn't go very well with the sandwiches, but that was no problem at all. Even her sweat appeared refreshing to my soul. Haruhi quickly devoured her portion before standing up like she needed to let out the heat built up in her body. I'm going back in for another swim. You can all join me when you're done eating. And then she dived back into the pool. I'm impressed by how she's able to swim so smoothly in a place with so many obstacles. The theory about humans originating from the ocean might have some merit, though I would expect Haruhi's distant ancestor to be capable of adapting to the moon if they were sent there with only the clothes on their backs. Sometime later, Nagato, eating slowly in silence, was left behind by the other 3 and headed for Haruhi, who was prancing around the water like a seal seeking a mate. By this point, Haruhi was having fun with a group of grade school girls playing underwater dodgeball. Mikuru, get over here! Okay! Asahina nodded leisurely before taking a direct hit to the face from Haruhi's rocket of a beach ball sinking underwater. An hour later, Koizumi and I climbed out of the water and sat by the pool with cheerful infants screaming in the background. We were definitely out of place here. What was Haruhi thinking when she chose this public pool? I'm not saying that there had to be like a water slide, but I'm pretty sure that there were more appropriate places for a group of high schoolers to go. I could feel the blazing sunlight rapidly increasing the amount of melanin in my skin. That made me wonder if Nagato could tan. So I looked around for her and found the small, short-haired, reticent girl sitting back in the shade, her sage eyes staring into space. The same way she always looked. Nagato was practically a statue no matter where we went. Or so I thought. Huh? I was hit by a sense of bafflement before it quickly vanished. There was that strange feeling again. For a moment, I could feel that Nagato was bored. Deja vu. Yeah, and then Haruhi would say the following. These 2 are my brigade members. They'll do whatever I say, so feel free to ask for anything. I turned back to the pool to find Haruhi had walked over to us with a group of little girls in tow. Asahina was up to her chin in the water and her eyes closed, probably tired out from having to deal with a bunch of hyper-grade schoolers. Haruhi, who probably had fewer worries than those grade schoolers, was in top gear as she turned her shining eyes toward Koizumi and me. Hey, let's go have a blast. We're gonna play underwater soccer. The 2 guys can be goalies. What kind of sport is that, and what kind of rules are involved? But before I could ask, the sense of deja vu disappeared. Yeah. I gave her a perfunctory reply as we stood up. Koizumi had a smile on his face as he joined the circle of children. That strange feeling was gone now. Well, it's a fairly common phenomenon, to dream about a moment from everyday life. Besides, I came to this pool when I was a kid. It's possible that a memory or two have resurfaced. Or there was the slight malfunction in the complex process of my brain used to transmit data. I pushed aside a nearby dolphin-shaped inflatable before chasing after the beach ball Haruhi had just bicycle kicked. Once we had as much fun as we could possibly stand, we left the public pool. On the way back, I was across the basic trio while Koizumi enjoyed a tandem of adolescence incarnate. This is why people snap. Asahina was sitting elegantly on the rack, her pale skin making the flush in her cheeks more pronounced as the blood rushed to her head. When I saw that one of her arms was wrapped around the waist of the rider on the saddle, I was about ready to pop a vessel. If I concentrated hard enough, I could almost hear the wind howling. I pedaled away on a bicycle in whichever direction Haruhi had pointed and eventually ended up back at our meeting place in front of the station. Oh, that's right. I have to pay for everybody. Once we settled down in the cafe, I placed a cold, wet towel on my forehead and slumped back in my seat. Literally 1 second later, I came up with a bunch of activities for us to do. What do you think? The sheet of paper made its majestic descent to the table as Haruhi pointed for us to look at it. A letter-sized sheet of paper was torn out of a notebook. What is this? Haruhi responded to my question boastfully. An itinerary of how we're spending what little remains of summer vacation. For who? For us! The SOS Brigade, Summer Special Series. Haruhi drained her glass of water and asked the server for another. I just noticed. We only have 2 weeks of summer vacation left. That left me in a state of shock. Wowzers! It feels like there are so many things I still want to do, but our time is limited. We'll be kicking it up a notch. Haruhi's handwritten outline said the following. Stuff we have to do over summer vacation. Summer camp, pool, bond dance, fireworks, part-time job, stargazing, batting practice, insect collecting, test of courage, etc. Summer fever. This disease probably escaped from the jungle somehow. It must have been spread by mosquitoes or some equivalent. I'll have to feel sorry for any mosquito that sucked Haruhi's blood. Probably ended up with food poisoning. Of the above, summer camp and pool were crossed out with large X's, which meant that we had to clear this list in less than 2 weeks. And what is etc. supposed to mean? There's more to come? Well, if I think of something. For now, this is all. Is there anything else you want to do? What about Mikuru? Asahina began thinking in earnest while I tried to make eye contact and send her a message. Don't suggest anything exotic. Well, I'd like to scoop goldfish. Okay. Haruhi used their ballpoint pen to add another item to the list. Haruhi proceeded to ask Nagato and Koizumi if they had any requests, but Nagato shook her head wordlessly while Koizumi declined with a slight smile. The correct choice. Excuse me for a second. Koizumi had quickly finished his iced coffee and proceeded to snatch the sheet of paper and study it. He appeared to be deep in thought, as though we were trying to track something down. Did this list of events warrant that kind of behavior? For the next few minutes, I watched as Nagato sipped soda through her straw without a sound. Koizumi returned Haruhi's so-called outline to the table and tilted his head slightly. What's that supposed to mean? We begin tomorrow. Meet up here in front of the station again tomorrow. Is there a bond dance going on anywhere nearby tomorrow? Fireworks would also work. Look this stuff up before we begin. I'll look into it, Koizumi volunteered. I'll be in touch later. Just bond dances for now. Or the location of a fireworks festival, correct? Don't forget about goldfish scooping, Koizumi. It's a rare request from Mikuru. Well, should I search for a location that combines the bond dance with a festival? Yep, please do. We're counting on you, Koizumi. Haruhi was in a good mood as she gulped down the ice cream from her coffee float in one bite and folded up the sheet of notebook paper as though it were a map that led to a treasure island. While I paid the bill, Haruhi ran off like a jogger practicing for an upcoming race. She may be trying to save her pent-up energy for tomorrow. If she's going to detonate, I'd prefer her to go out with a bang instead of dragging the process out. Wouldn't have to waste time picking up the pieces that way. The remaining 4 brigade members went our separate ways, and once I was sure that the other 2 were far enough away, I called out to the backside of the remaining one. Yo, Nagato. The organic humanoid clad in a summer sailor uniform turned in response to my voice. She stared back at me wordlessly with a neutral expression on her pale face, 2 artificial-looking eyes that showed neither rejection nor acceptance. I was bugged by how something felt wrong. Nagato showing no emotions was business as usual, but there was something odd about Nagato today that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Well, I managed to stop her, but now I was flustered after realizing I didn't really have anything to say. It's nothing, really. How have you been? You doing okay? Why the fuck am I asking these questions? Nagato blinked slowly before nodding so slightly that you need a protractor to tell. Okay. Oh, that's good to hear. Yes. Her rigid face, which barely ever showed the signs of movement, appeared to be even tighter. No, wait, I got it backward. It seems to have loosened up, oddly enough. I have no idea how my eyes could have completely contradicted themselves. I guess I'll just say that human perception is limited and leave it at that? In the end, I couldn't find anything else to say, so I bid a hasty farewell and turned away from Nagato to make my escape. For some reason, I had a feeling that it was better this way, and so I rode my bicycle back home, ate dinner, took a shower, and watched some TV before I eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I was awoken from my idle slumber by another call from Haruhi. She found a place holding a Bond dance festival. It'd be this evening at the public grounds. Well, there you have it. Found one at the perfect time, huh? As I was appreciating this fact, Haruhi said the following. Let's go all buy summer kimonos! That's how today's schedule would begin, apparently. Originally, I planned on wearing them for Tanabata, but I accidentally forgot. Something must have been wrong with me. The fact that Japanese customs allow for the wearing of summer kimonos 2 months in a row is a real lifesaver. Lives were saved? I should mention that this was broad daylight. This would explain why we had to meet up so early for a nighttime event. Just like the day before, Haruhi was all on her high horse, Asahina was mellow, Nagato was silent, and Koizumi had that smirk on his face as we gathered in front of the station like clockwork. Mikuru and Yuki don't have summer kimonos. I don't either. I was passing through the shopping district the other day when I saw a place that sold the whole outfit, sandals and all, for a cheap price. We should go there. Asahina and Nagato stood there as I pictured the female members in summer kimonos. Well, it is summer. Koizumi and I would go in our usual clothes. Save the fancy bathrobes for hotels. I sure don't want to see a man in a summer kimono. That's true. Koizumi would look good, but in your case... Haruhi snorted as she looked me up and down. Okay, let's go. She delivered her order and waved the fan in her hand. Off to the kimono store we go. Once Haruhi entered the women's clothing shop, she arbitrarily chose Asahina and Nagato's outfits before stomping over to a changing room. Nagato was the only one who knew how to put on a summer kimono on, so the other two needed help from a female clerk, which was very time-consuming. Koizumi and I were left to wander the racks of women's clothing until the three of them finally assembled in front of the mirrors. Haruhi had a flashy hibiscus pattern, Asahina had goldfish of all colors, and Nagato featured a bunch of plain geometric shapes. Each summer kimono was becoming in its own way, which left me confused on where to look. The female clerk was glancing at Koizumi and me if she wanted to know whose was whose boyfriend. But too bad for her. Koizumi aside, I was just an escort. Am I supposed to feel disappointed? Well, I got to see a summer kimono version of Asahina, so it's all good. Haruhi and Nagato also look good in their own ways. Not that this needed to be said out loud. Mikuru, you're... Asahina took one look at Asahina and burst into joy. Absolutely adorable! I must be a genius. I knew I had the right idea. The sight of you in a summer kimono would have 95% of the men in this world fawning over you. I asked about the remaining 5%. Well, her charms are not going to work on gay men. 5 out of every 100 guys are gay. Never forget that. I really doubt I'll ever need that information. Asahina also seemed rather pleased as she spun around in the front of the fitting room mirror and examined her attire. So this would be the traditional dress in this country. It's a bit tight around the chest, but it looks wonderful. This was definitely one of the better outcomes Haruhi had forced on her. Didn't show as much skin as the bunny outfit, and felt less exotic than the maid uniform. A costume that was perfectly safe to wear around town this time of year, like a natural feature of summer. And she looked damn good in it. It was almost like I was looking at my sister in a summer kimono, with the exception of the unbalanced swelling above her sash. Still, if it's cute, it's all good. There was a divine aura emitting from Asahina's entire body that made you willing to forgive anything. She could become a mastermind of a bank robbery, and I would willingly plead her case. Don't know if I could say the same for Haruhi. Since Haruhi and her lack of time management had forced us to assemble bright and early, we had a sizable amount of time left before the Bond Dance Festival. Thus, we had no choice but to kill time at the park in front of the station, during which time Haruhi braided Asahina and Nagato's hair. The two of them obediently sat on the bench like dolls as Haruhi kept changing their hairstyles, each one stunning enough that I felt like snapping away with a camera, until the sun finally began to set and we lined up to head for the public grounds. The Bond Dance Festival was already bustling with activity, despite the fact that it was still light out, as people flooded in out of nowhere. I was surprised by all the people there. Oh wow! Asahina was unreserved in expressing her admiration. Nagato never reacted to anything. I'd never actually seen someone dance at a Bond dance, and this time was no different. But a Bond dance, huh? I haven't seen one in forever. Oh, there it is again. A headache with a tinge of deja vu. Pretty sure I hadn't been to one in years, yet it feels like I just went to one recently. The stage in the center of the grounds and the festival stands all around seemed vaguely familiar. But then, as though I was grasping at the threads of a spider web dangling in the air, the sensation abruptly vanished. I could hear Haruhi's voice. "Mikuru, there's the goldfish scooping you wanted to do. Scoop all you want. You get an extra 200 points for a black moor." Haruhi made up her own rules as she took Asahina's hand and dashed over to the tank of the scooping fish. "Shall we join them? How about a contest to see who can catch more?" The game-loving Koizumi made a proposal, and I immediately shook my head. I don't have a bowl to put goldfish in. Anyway, I'm more interested in the food vendors and the mouth-watering aromas than their waves. "What about you, Nagato? Want to grab something to eat?" She looked at me with her cheerless eyes before slowly turning away. Her eyes were focused on the mask vendor. "That's what you're interested in?" I really don't get her. "Okay, well, let's have a look around." The speakers began playing easy-listening festival music. I took Nagato to the mask vendor, while Koizumi being a nuisance and tagging along. That was a fine haul, but I only took one, since I didn't need that many. Mikuru couldn't catch any, so I gave her one of mine. There was a small plastic bag dangling from Asahina's finger that contained a very plain, small orange fish swimming without a care. The way Asahina tightly gripped the string was adorable to watch. Her other hand held the candy apple, which gave me the idea to buy one to take home for my sister. Can't hurt to get on her good side every now and then. Meanwhile, Haruhi was toying with a yo-yo balloon in her left hand while carrying a tray of takoyaki, octopus dumplings, in her right. "You want one?" And with that, she extended the tray. I was savoring the taste of takoyaki dripping with sauce when... "Huh? Yuki, what's with the mask?" "Bought one," Nagato said as she stared at the toothpick protruding from her takoyaki. The side of Nagato's head was adorned by a silver alien. I suppose that she probably felt connected to it in some way, as an alien herself, since she had gone so far as to extend her paw from her sleeve to point it out. I had a feeling I was in Nagato's debt, so I wouldn't have a problem with buying that for her, but Nagato had declined without a word and paid for it herself. That reminds me, what does she do for income? The stage was surrounded by women in summer kimonos and children swaying to the sounds of traditional music. Felt like I was watching a gathering of associations for old people, women, and children. Anyone who came to a bond dance to have fun would never actually dance. And naturally, we weren't. Asahina was watching the dancing people with as much fascination as if she had been watching locals do a backward jungle dance in welcome. She softly expressed her appreciation. I guess they don't have bond dances in the future. With Haruhi leading our little band, we browsed the festival before the rest of us eventually reduced the servants trailing after Haruhi as she pointed out food she wanted to eat or attractions she wanted to try. Haruhi certainly appeared to be enjoying herself, and Asahina did as well, which made this fun for me. I couldn't tell if Nagato was having fun or not, and I could not have cared less about how Koizumi felt. Every now and then, Koizumi would suddenly fall silent before smiling again. This guy's been having mood swings of his own the past couple of days, though that may have just been the fate of every person who joins the SOS Brigade. It was summer vacation. As I watched the three girls in their summer kimonos, I had a feeling that those words would excuse anything that might happen. So when Haruhi said the following, "Let's do fireworks! Fireworks! We're already dressed for it! Get it out of the way today!" I was all for it. We bought a cheap fireworks package from the children at one of the stands and headed off to a nearby riverbed, where the summer night sky would only be illuminated by the moon and Mars. On the way there, we stopped to buy a 200 yen lighter and an instant camera. The rest of us followed after Haruhi, who marched along while swinging her yo-yo balloon and waving her fan. She seemed to be more hyper than usual. For some reason, I was reminded of the phrase, "the clothes make the man," or, well, the clothes make a woman, but you know what I mean. As I stared at Haruhi's bouncing hair, I could even bring myself to warn her about the long strides in a summer kimono. Haruhi is defined by her pep and strength. For the next hour, I took numerous pictures of Asahina staring wide-eyed at a sparkler, Haruhi running around with a fountain firework in each hand, and Nagato staring at a black snake twisting and turning, before the SOS Brigade's summer activities were over for the day. Haruhi glanced over at Koizumi, who was placing the remains of the fireworks in a plastic bag after dipping them in water, before tracing her lips with her finger and speaking. "We can do insect collecting tomorrow, then!" It would appear that she intended to clear off every item of her list. "Haruhi, there's nothing wrong with having fun, but have you finished your summer homework?" Not that I was in any position to talk when I hadn't even touched mine. Haruhi looked puzzled for a moment. "What's wrong with you? That little bit of homework only takes 3 days to finish. I finished mine back in July. That's how I always do it. Get the painful stuff over early so you're free to have fun without any worries. That would be the correct way to enjoy summer vacation." Haruhi secretly believed that it was only a little bit of homework. Why does a girl like her have to have brains? God did a pretty half-assed job of spreading the wealth. Haruhi gave us a glare. "All right, guys, bring bug-catching nets and insect cages when we assemble. Got it? Yes, we'll have a contest to see who can collect the most. The winner gets to be brigade chief for a day. Who would want that title? So any insect will do? Well, they'll have to be cicadas. Yep, this will be the SOS Brigade Cicada Hunt. The rules are any type will do. Whoever catches the most wins. Haruhi was making decisions and getting excited by herself as she swung her fan around as though she were trying to catch an insect. Net and cage, huh? I think I have those in my closet from a long time ago. And when I finally made it back home, I realized I had forgotten to buy a candy apple for my sister. The next day, there wasn't a single cloud in sight, despite the fact that I'd driven a long nail into one of those rain-making dolls in the hopes that it would pour. The cicadas seemed quite pleased with the hottest summer day so far. I wonder if cicadas are edible. They might taste good if we deep fry them. You know, I've been wondering, does deep fried stuff taste good because of the batter? Because if that's the case, cicadas would work. Eat them by yourself. Don't you find anything wrong with the sight of a group of 5 high schoolers carrying nets and cages? We assembled before noon and made our way toward North High in search of a greenery. After all, our high school was in the middle of the mountains, so there were more than enough trees around, and forests were the ideal habitat for insects. I had believed that I lived in a fairly big city, but apparently it wasn't as barren as I thought. The area was swimming with crying bugs, as if every tree trunk were covered in cicadas. Plenty for everyone. Even Asahina, stumbling around while flailing with her net, was able to catch a few. The cicadas here apparently fail to recognize that humans are the greatest danger to their existence. Now would be a good time to tell them. After catching numerous cicadas, I watched as they sat still in the cage. I have no idea how many years they spent underground, but I'm pretty sure that they didn't molt so Haruhi could fry them. Besides, I've been feeling a little guilty about the decrease in crying insects during the last few summers. Sorry about spreading asphalt everywhere, guys. Please forgive human ignorance. Haruhi couldn't possibly have heard my monologue, but nevertheless she said the following. We need to follow the spirit of catch and release. If we let them go, they might return the favor in the future. I imagine a human-sized cicada knocking on my door to my house. If somebody were to come back and return the favor after being arbitrarily caught and released, he'd be as dumb as a bug. Revenge would make more sense. Haruhi opened her insect cage and shook it back and forth. There! Go back to the mountains! A number of cicadas bumped against one another before flying out of the cage and soaring over Asahina, who let out an adorable shriek as she crouched down, and right past the head of Nagato, standing perfectly still, before disappearing into the sunset in spirals and straight lines. I followed suit. As I watched the cicadas pour out, I almost felt like I was Pandora accidentally opening the box from Hermes. It didn't occur to me to keep one for myself until the cicadas were long gone out of sight. On the next day, there was an employment waiting for us. Haruhi was kind enough to share this part-time job she managed to find. Our work for the day consisted of... Welcome. I could hear Asahina stuttering hesitantly. Okay, everybody, line up. Hey, don't push. The job that Haruhi had strong-armed us into, like a pushy salesman, was to bring in customers at a local supermarket's grand opening sale. We were assembled without knowing what was going on, stuffed into costumes without knowing what was going on, and forced to promote the supermarket starting at 10 in the morning. I should mention that these were animal mascot costumes. Seriously, I don't get it. Why do I have to wear this thing? Isn't it Asahina's job to wear different costumes? Hey, Koizumi, Nagato, you should also complain. Why are you following her orders in silence? Please line up. I'm begging you. I could hear Asahina, clad in green, stumbled over her words as I sweat like a pig. We were dressed as frogs, and our job was to hand children balloons. Apparently, this was the special event that was part of the annual celebration to commemorate the original grand opening. Any customers who brought their families would receive free balloons. Ooh. Only kids could ever get excited about a little freebie like that. Hey, brat with a stupid look on your face, I'll give you this red balloon. Here you go. Asahina the tree frog was especially popular. Incidentally, Koizumi was a black-spotted pond frog, and I was the toad. We didn't have any choice. Nagato, dressed as a Suramam horned frog, used the pump to inflate balloons for the 3 of us to pass out, while Haruhi stayed cool indoors in her regular clothes. There's gonna be mutiny if she's paid the same as the rest of us. Apparently, the owner of the store was an acquaintance of Haruhi's. He smiled when Haruhi walked up to him and said, "Hey, old-timer." After 2 hours of hard work, the balloons ran out and everybody besides Haruhi headed to the storeroom-like area to remove the excess garments. Now I know what it feels like to be a snake to shed its skin. I've rarely ever felt so relieved in the past few years. Nagato walked out with an aloof expression, but Asahina, Koizumi, and I were dripping in sweat as we slid out of the frog suits and remained silent for a while. I had no longer the energy to carefully observe Asahina in her flimsy tank top and short skirt. Good work, team! When Haruhi showed up eating ice cream, I seriously wanted to bury her up to her neck in a hot desert. And as a finishing blow, our pay came in the form of that tree frog costume. Based on Haruhi's nonchalant revelation, this had been her goal from the very beginning. She held the thin, discarded green frog disguise under her arm as though she was a general who had just been awarded 100 pounds of gold. Our well-deserved pay never existed to begin with.
Oh, what's wrong with that? I've wanted this for a long time, and my wish has been granted. The old-timer said he'll give it to me for Mikuru's sake. Mikuru, I'll award you a special handmade medal. I haven't made one yet, though, so you're gonna have to wait.
One more piece of garbage to add to Asahina's belongings. It'll probably be an armband with the word medal written on it.
I'll stick this frog in the clubroom as a souvenir. Mikuru, feel free to wear this whenever you want. I give you full permission.
I couldn't bring myself to feel angry after seeing the look on Haruhi's face. I was completely exhausted. After constant activity day and night between the pool, insect collecting, and sauna a la giant costume, any perfectly healthy high school boy would be on his last legs. Thus, I was sound asleep that night in a tranquil dreamland until my cell phone started to ring. Nothing pisses me off more than being woken up in the middle of the night by a pointless phone call. It was an unreasonable time to call other people, and Haruhi was the only person I knew who was irrational enough to do such a thing, so I was fully prepared to yell at her as I pressed the talk button on my cell phone half asleep, only to hear the sound of a girl crying. It sent shivers down my spine. I instantly woke up. This is bad. I just heard something I wasn't supposed to. A second before I was about to toss the phone down.
Kyun.
Asahina, what's wrong? Don't tell me that she's been calling to say goodbye forever. This better not be anything like the famous folktale of Princess Kaguya going back to the moon. I realized that the present time was only a temporary residence for her. I understood that she would eventually have to return to the future. Had the time come? I won't accept a farewell over the phone. However, the lovely lady on the other end of the phone continued.
Something terrible has... At this rate,
She was making about as much sense as a grade schooler with her words all slurred together. I was wondering what I was supposed to do when... Hello, this is Koizumi. That cheerful voice of a goddamn man took over. Why were they together at this late hour? Why am I not there? Your head will be separated from your body in 5 seconds, Koizumi, if you don't appease me with an answer I can accept. We have a bit of a situation on our hands. A particularly difficult one, which is why Asahina contacted me. Before contacting me? I am not happy about that. There wouldn't have been any point consulting you. No, excuse me. In fact, I was also unable to provide any help. A perilous predicament. I scratched my head furiously. Is Haruhi on the verge of ending the world again? Well, technically, no. In fact, it's the exact opposite. As things stand in the moment, the world can never end. Huh? Am I still dreaming? What is this guy talking about? Koizumi sensed my confusion and continued. I already contacted Nagato. As expected, she was already aware of the situation. The details will become clear if we ask Nagato. Which is why I must ask, would it be possible for us to meet up right now? Minus Suzumiya, naturally. Well, of course it'd be possible. Any person capable of abandoning a weeping Asahina would deserve to be sliced up 7 times and more. Yeah, I'll be right there. Where are you? Koizumi told me his location, in front of the usual station, the SOS Brigade's official meeting place. And so I got changed, sneaked through the hallway of my house, and took off on my bicycle to find 3 shadowy figures awaiting upon my arrival. The streets weren't completely deserted, as I spotted a few students here and there. As a result, we were able to blend in with a crowd of fools with nowhere to go on a summer night as I conduct our dubious meeting without any worries. Though I was definitely starting to nod off. Asahina, dressed in pastels, was crouching in front of the station with a disheveled Koizumi and Nagato in a sailor uniform flanking her like a pail of decorative pine trees. Asahina must have thrown on whatever was handy because her clothes really didn't match. She must have been in a real panic or pressed for time. The tallest of them apparently noticed me as he waved me over. Alright guys, what's going on? The faint glow from the lamp post illuminated the soft expression on Koizumi's face. I apologize for calling you at such a late hour. However, Asahina is rather distraught, as you can see. Asahina was squatting down and sobbing like a melting snowman. She looked up to me with a tearful face and dry eyes so captivating I was on the verge of throwing away everything to help her out.
Kyun,
Asahina sniffed before murmuring to herself.
I can no longer return to the future.
Allow me to summarize. Basically, we're stuck in an infinite time loop. Hard to believe something so ludicrous when you have a smile on your face. Did Koizumi have any idea what he was saying? Well, of course, I'm fully aware of the implications. I was discussing the matter with Asahina earlier. Call me first, so I can be part of that discussion. As a result, we realized that it was odd about the recent flow of time. You should credit the discovery to Asahina. She was able to confirm my suspicion. What suspicion? That we were experiencing the same period of time over and over. I've already heard about that. To be precise, it would be the period from August 17th to the 31st. Koizumi's words sounded rather hollow to me. We are currently in the middle of a summer vacation with no end. We're certainly on summer vacation right now. A literal endless summer. In this world, we'll never see September, much less autumn. There's no future after August. That is why Asahina can't return to the future. It all makes sense. It's only natural that she cannot communicate with the future when the future no longer exists. How can the physical lack of a future be natural? Time marches on regardless of what we do. I stared on top of Asahina's head as I spoke. Who would ever believe that? Well, I was hoping you might believe me since I couldn't possibly tell Suzumiya. Koizumi also looked down at Asahina. I should mention that Asahina at least tried to explain, to the accompaniment of intermittent sobs.
You see, I normally use classified information to contact the future, but after a week without classified information, I was starting to wonder if something was wrong, and then classified information. I was so surprised that I tried to classified information in a rush, but there wasn't any classified information. What do I do?
I have no idea what you should do, but does that classified information work like some kind of sensor? So are we trapped in some kind of weird world created by Haruhi, like a real-life version of that closed space thing? Koizumi had his arms crossed as he leaned against the vending machine and rejected my hypothesis in a light tone. The world has not been recreated. Suzumiya has cut off a sector of time, the period from August 17th to the 31st. Thus, we are currently in a world that only consists of 2 weeks. Any point before August 17th or after August 31st has completely disappeared. This is a world that will never see September. He exhaled in what sounded like a failed attempt to whistle. There is a process right before midnight on August 31st where everything is reset and returned to August 17th. What about everybody's memories? Those are also reset, as if 2 weeks leading up to that point never happened. Everybody starts over from the beginning. Somebody must really love to screw with time, though I really shouldn't be surprised when there's a time traveler among us. No, Asahina has nothing to do with this incident. This situation is not as simple as it might have deemed. How do you know? Only Suzumiya would be capable of such a feat. Or did you have somebody else in mind? You'd have to be delusional or a chronic daydreamer to have a list of potential psychopaths on hand. So what am I supposed to do? The matter will be as good as solved when we figure that out. Koizumi appeared to be enjoying himself. He certainly didn't seem to be very worried. I don't know why. Well, I finally know the source of the strange sensation I've been experiencing the past few days. Koizumi revealed his reason why. You must have felt the same way. Starting from the day we went to the public pool, there have been intermittent, intense flashes of deja vu. In retrospect, I would say those are remnants of the memories from previous loops. For a lack of a better way to describe it, we were sensing the parts left over from the reset. Could the whole world be feeling the same way? I doubt that. You and I are the exceptions. People who are close to Suzumiya appear to have a higher chance of noticing the anomaly. Well, what about Haruhi? Is she aware what's going on? It seems she's utterly clueless, though you could say it's better this way. Koizumi gave Nagato a sideways glance before casually posing a question. So then, how many times have we repeated the last 2 weeks of August? Nagato answered with a calm expression on her face. This would be the 15,498th incarnation. I felt faint for a moment there. 15,498? That's over 30 characters written out, while 15,498 feels considerably smaller. Yay for Arabic numerals. I feel like offering a prayer to thanks whoever came up with the idea. This derailment only serves to show how disturbed I was. We have repeated the same 2 weeks over 10,000 times. If an ordinary person were to be aware of this loop and retain the memories from each incarnation, he would experience a mental breakdown. I believe that Suzumiya's memories have been completely wiped clean, cleaner than ours, Koizumi explained. This is when you turn to the most knowledgeable person around. I checked in with Nagato. Are you serious about this? Yes. Nagato nodded. So wait, we've already done stuff scheduled for tomorrow in the past, along with a bond dance and goldfish scooping? That's not necessarily the case. Nagato's voice wasn't showing much emotion either. Haruhi Suzumiya has not followed the same course of action in each of the previous 15,497 incarnations. Nagato gave me an unconcerned look as she spoke in that unconcerned tone. Over the course of the previous 15,497 loops, there were 2 instances without a trip to the bond dance.
There were 437 instances where the trip occurred without goldfish scooping. At the moment, every loop has included a visit to the public pool. There are 9,025 instances of working part-time, but there have been 6 different variations. Aside from distributing balloons, we have also been carrying objects, manning cash registers, passing out flyers, working a call center, and modeling for a photo shoot. Of course, there were 6,011 instances of balloon distribution and 360 instances of 2 or more jobs performed. The incarnations with multiple jobs can be divided into... Yeah, that's enough. I silenced the alien-made artificial human before putting my thinking cap on. We've been through the back half of August 15,004... Oh, whatever. Everything was reset on August 31st, and we started over from August 17th. I had no recollection of this happening, but Nagato did. Why? Because Nagato, or the Data Overmind, to be precise, is the existence that transcends space-time. Koizumi's smug smirk seemed a bit forced, or maybe that was just the light. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Moving on. I understand that Nagato and her boss are capable of such a feat, but that wasn't my concern. So Nagato, you've actually experienced this 2-week period 15,497 times? Yes. Nagato nodded like it wasn't a big deal. Yes? Don't you have, anything else to say? Not that I can think of anything else to say, but still. Wait, 15,498 times, multiplied by 2 weeks, that comes out to 216,972 days. Around 594 years. She's gone through centuries, loop after loop, just standing there and watching us impassively. How could anyone not be sick and tired of that? I mean, 15,000 visits to the public pool? My mouth remained open as my voice trailed off. Nagato cocked her head like a small bird as she stared at me. I recalled that feeling I had when I saw Nagato sitting by the pool. Guess I might have been correct when I thought she looked bored. I'd assumed that even Nagato would get sick of all that repetition. She never says anything, but she might have clicked her tongue or something while no one was looking. And that was when a sudden thought hit me. I more or less understood the phenomenon we were dealing with, but I didn't know why this was happening. Why is Haruhi doing this? This is merely speculation. Koizumi gave a little disclaimer. Suzumiya doesn't want summer vacation to end on a subconscious level. That is why her summer vacation won't end. Because she's acting like a little brat who doesn't want to go back to school? Koizumi absently traced his finger around the rim of his can of coffee. I would assume that she feels like there's still something left that can be done about summer vacation. She can't begin the new term unless that's been done, or else she'll have a lingering regrets. And then when she falls asleep on the night of August 31st and that gnawing regret, she wakes up to find that clock has been turned back 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm just about ready to give up on her. I know she was capable of doing about anything, but this takes her lack of common sense to a whole new level. So what's going to take to satisfy her? I don't know. Do you know, Nagato? I do not. Didn't take her long to respond. You realize you're the only one we can depend on here. I attempted to voice that thought. Nagato, why didn't you tell us that we've been engaged in an endless 2-week-long waltz? After a few seconds of silence, Nagato's thin lips parted. My job is to observe. I see. I already knew that more or less Nagato had yet to actively involve herself in any of our activities, but she got involved, in the end, almost every time. However, she's only initiated contact once, when she invited me to her apartment. Barring that exception, Nagato's merely accompanying us in her extremely vital position. How could I forget? Yuki Nagato is a humanoid interface created by the Data Overmind, an organic android dispatched to observe Haruhi. There might be a safety mechanism on her ability to feel emotion. But none of that matters. What mattered was that I considered Yuki Nagato a book-loving, reticent, petite, and ever-so-reliable classmate, one of us. If you looked at the SOS Brigade members, Nagato had the most knowledge as well as the ability to apply that knowledge, so I had a few more questions for her. When did you first realize this? I asked this question on a whim, but Nagato answered as though she'd been expecting it. The 8,769th loop, since we were consistently finding ourselves disoriented by deja vu. However, during those past sequences, we were unable to correct the flow of time after realizing our situation. Yes, said Nagato, which explained why Asahina was crying right now, because she now knew the truth, and then 2 weeks' worth of memories, experience, and growth would be reset, and she'd find herself crying after learning the truth again. And once again, I find myself with the same reaction I had more times than I care to remember since meeting Haruhi back in spring. The same reaction I had every single time Haruhi created some new, godforsaken mess.
The same reaction I have right now. What the hell? And I've had that reaction 8,769 times in the past 2 weeks. Seriously, chalk it up to another ridiculous conversation. We went stargazing the next day. The location was on the roof of Nagato's apartment. Koizumi brought a bulky telescope and he mounted on a tripod. It was around 8 p.m. The sky was dark and so was Asahina's mood. She just stood there in a dazed stupor. This wasn't really the time to be looking at the stars, so I wasn't in better shape myself. Koizumi, who seemed to have recovered his composure, bruised himself with the setting up the telescope with a smile on his face. This was a hobby of mine when I was young. I was deeply moved when I first saw the moons of Jupiter for the first time. Nagato was the same as always, just standing there on the roof. I looked up at the night sky, but there were only a handful of stars. The polluted air made them difficult to see. You could even say that there was no sky to see. Come winter, the atmosphere would clear and Orion would be visible, at the very least. The telescope was pointed at Earth's neighbor. Haruhi was peering through the finder. I wonder if they exist. Any what? Martians. I'd rather they didn't. I pictured a bunch of octopus-like monsters ringing around as they plotted world domination, and it certainly didn't sound entertaining in the slightest. Why? They could be a friendly bunch. Look, there's nobody on the surface. I'm sure they're just a really reserved race who lives in underground caverns. They're trying to avoid scaring us Earthlings. The Martians in Haruhi's head sound like residents of a hollow Earth. Can't you make up your mind? I'm sure they have a plan to pop out and welcome us when the first manned spacecraft lands on Mars. They'll be like, "Welcome to Mars, neighbors, denizens of our neighboring planet." I'm sure of it. That'd be the bigger scare. Practically an ambush. I have no idea who's going to be the first step on Martian soil, but I should probably warn that person. Do I address the letter to NASA? Time passed as we took turns using the telescope to observe the patterns of Mars and lunar craters. I suddenly noticed that someone was missing and began glancing around before I found Asahina sitting against the rooftop railing and hugging her knees. She had her head bowed down and her eyes were shut. Doubt she got much sleep last night, so I'll let her rest for now. Haruhi had apparently grown tired of the night sky that showed no signs of dramatic change. Let's look for UFOs. They're probably targeting Earth. There must be alien scouts standing by orbit. She cheerfully began turning the telescope this way and that before she lost interest again. She sat down next to Asahina and leaned against her slender shoulder before falling asleep. Koizumi turned to me and spoke in a soft voice. She must have worn herself out. I don't see how she could be more tired than the rest of us. Haruhi was sound asleep. I was tempted to draw on her face. Still, she looked at her best when she was asleep. If only she would keep her mouth shut. If she swapped personalities with Nagato, that would be perfect. Well, a subdued Haruhi is one thing, but I can't even begin to imagine a talkative Nagato whose mood swings all over the place. A night breeze blew by as I watched Haruhi and Asahina sleeping side by side. Haruhi wasn't surrendering anything in Asahina in terms of looks at the moment. Some might even rank her above, I guarantee it. What does she want to do? I sighed to myself. Have fun with her friends? Something like that? I would assume that's the case, and we would be the friends you mentioned. Koizumi looked off in the night sky. So then, which fun activity are we supposed to engage in? This won't end until we figure that out. We will be forced to repeat this 2-week period until we determine what Suzumiya desires, which she herself does not know, and then grant her wish. I suppose we should be grateful that our memories are being reset, or else we would have suffered mental breakdowns long ago. 15,498 times. Seriously? Isn't Nagato just trying to fool us? Quite frankly, I find this still hard to believe. Still, I could certainly see Haruhi doing something like this, since I've seen her power, still an unsolved mystery, do some blockhead things without knowing. Doesn't matter if she's doing something consciously or unconsciously, the end result can only mean trouble for me and everybody else. And since we continue to faithfully stick with Haruhi, you have to wonder if we're in some kind of overly nice goodwill organization. The SOS Brigade has some really good-tempered members. Though you know that the world's gone off its rocker when I have to say it in its fate. Besides, people like to assume that the world should be a certain way to which we absolutely must adhere, but in reality, that's just a bunch of bullshit that ends up tailored to different ideologies. And since they don't realize this, we find ourselves with people who blindly force their own ideals on the other people. You might want to consider how future generations will view your actions in 1,000 years or so. I was going off on a little nice tangent when Koizumi suddenly interrupted me. I don't know what Suzumiya's looking for, but why don't we try this? Embrace her from behind without warning and whisper, "I love you," into her ear. Who's supposed to do that? Would anyone be more suited for the role than you? I'm vetoing that idea. I pass. Should I try it instead? I had no way of seeing the look on my face at the moment. since I didn't have a mirror handy. However, Koizumi could.
I'm kidding. I wouldn't be able to fulfill the role. I would just only confuse Suzumiya.
And with that, he began to chuckle in a grating tone. I fell silent again as I stared up the radiant moon, the visible light in the hazy summer sky. The silver disk, surrounded by engulfing darkness, almost seemed to beckon me as it reflected brilliant sunlight. Beckon me where? Who knows? That's all I could think about as I watched Nagato stand up perfectly still and look up into the sky. Summer wasn't quite over yet, but our summer vacation was about to end, and yet we couldn't be entirely sure if it would ever end. Give me a break. Seriously. We might find ourselves going back to August 17th. How are we supposed to figure out what's still left to be done in Haruhi's mind? What's left? I haven't touched the stack of homework that I'm supposed to do over summer vacation, but that really shouldn't have anything to do with Haruhi. Hell, she's already finished her homework. Haruhi was carrying an aluminum bat, the same beat-up bat she swiped from the baseball team way back when. The really old-looking one that seemed more suited for beating people to death than for hitting baseballs. Didn't realize she still had it. Our brigade chief tossed back her hair as she flashed $1 million smile at all of us that led us to the batting center along the railroad tracks. I'm guessing that the inspiration for this came from watching high school baseball. I'm also guessing that the brigade members are taking turns being melancholic. Right now we have Asahina, who's either blue or looking blue. Bad news for me, unfortunately. Guess she still wants to return to her original time. Nagato and Koizumi were more or less back to their usual selves. No mask girl and smiley face boy, as they walked behind me. They're acting like this isn't any of their responsibility. Could you at least pretend to care? I exhaled and focused my eyes ahead on Haruhi's black hair as it bounced around. Ever since I met her, ever since the SOS Brigade was founded, someone had decided it would be my job to babysit Haruhi. No idea who it was, so I'll have to control my urge to vent, but let me just say this at least. Don't overestimate me. I'm just your typical average Joe. Hollow words at this point. Asahina was a confused mess. Koizumi only ever smiled. Nagato simply observed. So I had to do something about Haruhi. But what was I supposed to do? Only Haruhi would know the answer, but she didn't even realize there was a problem.
Mikuru, you don't have to swing the bat. Practice bunting. It's not like you're gonna hit the ball if you swing. You want the ball to roll up on the ground after it hits the bat. No, don't pop it up.
I guess that the baseball tournament had left a lasting impression on Haruhi. Don't tell me she plans on entering again next year. Haruhi was hogging the 80-mile-per-hour batting cage as she hit one fastball after another. She seemed to enjoy herself so much that I found myself cheering up. This girl is really something. She must have a higher mitochondrial count than your average person. Wonder where all of her energy comes from. If she could only use that for the greater good. After that, Haruhi moved through her schedule so fast no one had time to hit the pause button, as we were constantly on the move every day. We even went to see a full-blown fireworks display. Aerial shells launched down by the shore. The three girls got back in their summer kimonos to be delighted, well, only Haruhi was delighted, by the fireworks soaring into the sky before bursting into a fiery bloom, and to laugh at the failed attempts of making caricatures out of the fireworks. Haruhi really enjoyed anything that was unnecessarily flashy. She had such an innocent smile when she was having a good time, and it made her look younger than her actual age, so I found myself averting my eyes. If I stare at her too long, I might get some weird ideas. Well, not that I know what those weird ideas might be. Still, I did understand the importance of dressing for the occasion. On a different day, we entered a fishing contest on a river near the district border. We didn't catch a single gabi. We kept reeling in these tiny fish I've never seen before, so we weren't able to participate in the measuring. Haruhi seemed to be interested in the casting motion itself, so we didn't really have to deal with the drastic penalties for losing or ego battles. By this point, Haruhi and I were burnt to a crisp, in sharp contrast with Koizumi and Asahina, who used UV protection. Nagato could probably stand for 3 days without tanning, which is fine by me, since a brown Nagato would be a surreal sight. And yes, I realized this wasn't the time to be enjoying myself. The days flashed by as we raced along our set path. Haruhi was full of energy. I was greatly distressed. Asahina had turned into a deeper shade of blue. Koizumi's forced smile showed that he had resigned himself to his fate. Nagato was the only one who hadn't changed. In retrospect, we did a lot of stuff over the past 2 weeks. We were approaching the time limit. Today was August 30th. Tomorrow would be our last day of summer vacation. I had to do something today or tomorrow, but I had no idea what to do. Summer sun, chirping cicadas, everything related to summer was a source of anxiety, and a high school baseball team had been crowned champion while I wasn't paying attention. Wish this could last a little longer. Until Haruhi was finally satisfied. Haruhi used the pen in her hand to cross off the items on our list. Yesterday we waited till the dead of night to head to a large cemetery with candles in hand for our last recreational event. A test of courage. There weren't any ghosts popping out to greet us or disembodied souls floating around. The only notable highlight was Asahina whimpering timidly in vain.
Well, we finished our list.
It was August 31st, a little past noon. We were at the usual cafe in front of the station. Haruhi was staring at the sheet of paper as if the location of the lost treasures of Tokugawa were written there in pen. Her expression was a mixture of satisfaction and regret. Under normal circumstances, I would have felt a similar regret, since we only have one day of summer vacation left. You know, under normal circumstances. I was seriously doubting the summer vacation would actually end. I'd have to be, after spending months in the SOS Brigade, a ridiculous organization led by an emotionally unstable brigade chief. Makes me wish I was more shallow, able to assume the simple-minded set that it's all good if Asahina's around. Well, I'll stop there. It's possible to have too much of a good thing.
Was this enough?
Haruhi seemed to be wavering as she used her straw to poke at the vanilla ice cream in her Coca-Cola float.
But yeah, I guess that's all there is. Is there anything else you guys want to do?
Nagato made no response as she stared at the lemon slice in her black tea. Asahina had her fists clenched tightly above her knees, looking like a puppy that was being scolded. Koizumi merely smiled as he lifted his cup of Vienna coffee to his lips. As for me, I couldn't think of anything to say, so I just sat there sullenly with my arms crossed as I tried to come up with something.
Oh well, we managed to get a lot of stuff done this summer. We visited a bunch of places, got to wear summer kimonos, and caught a lot of cicadas too.
Sounded to me like Haruhi was trying to convince herself that we'd done enough. But that's not the case here. It's not enough. Deep down, Haruhi doesn't want summer vacation to end yet. She may say it, but that won't change how she feels on the inside. Because if we dig deep down, way deep down there, she isn't satisfied.
I guess that's...
Haruhi handed me the bill.
All for today. I had tomorrow set aside in case, but you can just rest at home. I'll see you all in the clubroom in 2 days then.
Haruhi stood up and moved away from the table as I started to panic. I couldn't let Haruhi leave. That would solve nothing. The 2-week repetition, discovered by Koizumi and confirmed by Nagato, will enter its 15,499th iteration. But what was I supposed to do? Haruhi was walking away in slow motion. That was when, out of the blue with no warning at all, it hit me. A completely jumbled up, wait, I've seen this happen before kind of thing. However, this comes with a sense of vertigo like none before. An overpowering sensation of deja vu that's stronger than anything else so far. And I recognize this. Memories from the 10,000 plus times we repeated this scene. August 31st, 1 day left. There should have been some kind of hint in what Haruhi said. What was it? What was it? What was it?
Is something wrong?
Someone was talking. Koizumi must have mentioned something as well. Something I was worried about that I kept putting off. Haruhi was ready to leave as she'd done thousands of times. I can't let her leave. Nothing will change. What methods have I tried before? Memories began flashing before my eyes. Everything our predecessors had tried. And everything they hadn't tried. No time to think. Say something. Anything. Make a wild guess.
My list isn't finished yet!
I didn't need to make a big deal about it, though. Looking back later after I had calmed down, this was the creation of another memory that needed to be erased from my hippocampus. The surrounding patrons and employees, along with Haruhi, turned around from her position in front of the automatic door, focused their attention on me. Words came pouring out on their own.
That's right, my homework. I haven't done my homework.
Every person in the cafe was frozen by my sudden outburst.
What are you talking about?
Haruhi walked over while looking at me like I was crazy.
Your lists? Homework?
I haven't touched my summer homework. I gotta finish that before my summer can end.
Are you insane?
That look she gave me implied that she thought I was. I don't really care. Hey, Koizumi.
Yes, what is it?
Koizumi also appeared to be taken back. Did you finish yours?
No, we've been so busy that I've only halfway through.
Then we can do this together. Nagato, you too. You aren't done yet, right? I didn't give Nagato a chance to respond as I turned to Asahina, whose mouth was hanging open like a puppet's. And while we're at it, I'd also like Asahina to come. We're gonna finish our summer list.
Huh?
Asahina was a second year, so her homework was different from ours, but that didn't really matter.
But, where?
We can do it at my house. Bring all your notes and problem sets so we can get them all done. Nagato and Koizumi, let me copy what you already have. Koizumi nodded. Is that alright with you, Nagato?
Yes.
The head with a pseudo bob cut nodded slowly before looking up at me. Okay, tomorrow then. We start tomorrow morning. We make it happen in 1 day. I pumped my fist in the air.
Hold it right there!
Haruhi had her hands on her hips as she stood next to the table.
Don't decide everything on your own. I'm the brigade chief. You're supposed to ask for my opinion first. Kyon, it's a serious violation of regulations for a brigade member to make an independent decision.
And with that, Haruhi gave me a glare before shouting at the top of her lungs.
I want to come too!
The next day, the next morning. Looks like I guessed right. I woke up in my own bed to find that the ordeal was over. Because, I can remember, that I returned from the countryside after the Bon Festival, going to the pool, catching cicadas, and all other August memories involving Haruhi and everybody else. And best of all, I even remember what yesterday's date was. Yesterday was August 31st, and today was September 1st. According to my newest memories, there had been an SOS Brigade study session in my room the last day of summer vacation. I recall being completely exhausted. When you consider the amount of effort it took to copy all the notes in one day, I can't even imagine how much effort it would have taken to do all the work on my own. I can guarantee that my vitality, energy, and spirit gauges were so low when I fell asleep last night that a single punch could have taken me out. Yesterday, Haruhi came to my room carrying a mountain of homework she already finished, gave a look of disdain to Koizumi, Nagato, Asahina, and me, scribbling away with our pencils, and ended up playing with my sister the whole time.
Don't copy word for word.
Haruhi was playing video games with my sister in the room, and she continued talking while jamming away at the controller.
Like, reword stuff and tweak calculations. The teachers aren't a bunch of idiots, you know. Yoshizaki, the math teacher, is especially tricky. He pays extra attention to those things. Though, in my opinion, his own solutions aren't very elegant.
My room already felt cramped with 5 people plus my sister, and then my mother kept coming in with juice and lunch and snacks to make me feel even more crowded. But Haruhi, unlike the rest of us, who were engaging in so much wrist movement that carpal tunnel was imminent, appeared to be having a pretty good time. She had such a relaxed smile on her face. In fact, Haruhi was so relaxed that she started giving Asahina, who was a grade above her, pointers on the essay she was struggling with. If Asahina gets a C on a report, it'll be Haruhi's fault. And with those memories firmly lodged in my mind, I got out of bed. Today was a new beginning of a term, I think. I'd never been so glad to see the second term begin. After the principal's speech at the gym and the shortened homeroom lesson, school was over. The current date was September 1st. I knew this because Taniguchi and Kunikita gave me such condescending looks when I asked them for the date when we were out of the classroom. The vendors and cafeteria weren't open today, so Haruhi had gone off to the snack shop outside the school gate. Koizumi and I were the only ones in the clubroom. Suzumiya excels both academically and athletically. I would assume that's been the case since she was a child, which is why she didn't consider our summer homework to be such a burden at all. And there was no chance she would ever think to share the workload with friends, since Suzumiya is fully capable of finishing the work by herself. As I listened to Koizumi's explanation, I drew a metal chair next to the window and looked down at the courtyard. Today was the first day of a new term, so I could have just gone home, but somehow I ended up coming here and found myself joined by Koizumi. The most unusual thing was the absence of Nagato. She didn't let it show, but she may have been tired. You know, it's hard to believe that was real, that we experienced the second half of August 15,000 times.
Well, it's only natural to feel that way.
Koizumi flashed a cheerful smile as he cut the deck.
At this point, we don't share any memories with the incarnations from 15,497 other loops. They do not exist in this time access, for we, the members of the 15,498th time, were the only ones able to return to the normal flow of time.
However, I have been given hints. The repeated sensations of deja vu, especially the ones at the end, may have been the gifts from our predecessors. Should I even consider them predecessors, since time was more or less a merry-go-round, like those tigers that ran in circles until they turned into butter? Still, I am here right now because of the ones who underwent those 2 weeks before us. I have to look at it that way, or their summers, erased by Haruhi, would have been for nothing, especially the 8,769 incarnations who knew they were being reset.
How about some poker?
Koizumi was shuffling cards like a novice magician. Guess I might as well humor him. Sure, what are we playing for? I don't have any money on me.
No betting then.
And naturally, when it didn't count, I scored an insane win, the first time I've ever seen a royal flush. If I ever get an opportunity to redo this day, I'll remember to place a bet.